She was left to die in the desert. But that wasn't the end of her story. What happened next not only saved her life, but changed everything she thought she knew about justice, survival, and who she really was. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The scorching Texas sun beat down on Sarah Mitchell as she stumbled through the vast, unforgiving plains. Her once pristine blue dress was now tattered and stained with blood, both her own and that of her husband, Sheriff James Mitchell. 3 days earlier, they had been ambushed by a group of outlaws seeking revenge for her husband's role in sending their leader to prison. James had managed to help her escape, but not before taking 2 bullets to the chest. His final words still echoed in her mind. "Run, Sarah, don't look back." Her cracked lips parted as she gasped for breath. The water in her canteen had run out hours ago, and the relentless heat showed no mercy. Her golden hair, once neatly pinned, now hung in dirty strands around her sunburned face. In the distance, the shimmer of what looked like water appeared, but Sarah knew better than to trust her eyes. The desert played cruel tricks on desperate minds. Just keep moving, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the whistling wind. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Sarah's strength finally gave out. Her knees buckled beneath her, and she collapsed onto the hard, dusty ground. The world around her began to fade as consciousness slipped away. In that moment, she thought of James and wondered if she would soon be joining him. But fate had other plans. She woke to the gentle touch of a damp cloth on her forehead. Blinking slowly, Sarah's vision cleared to reveal the face of a Comanche warrior looking down at her with concern in his dark eyes. She tried to scramble away, but her body refused to cooperate. "Be still," the man said in accented but clear English. "You are safe here." Sarah's gaze darted around, taking in her surroundings. She was inside a teepee, lying on a bed of soft furs. The air was filled with the scent of herbs and wood smoke. Outside, she could hear the sounds of a bustling camp, children playing, women talking, horses nickering. Who are you?" She managed to ask, her throat painfully dry. The warrior handed her a wooden cup filled with cool water. "I am called Running Wolf. I found you near death in the plains. The spirits guided me to you." Sarah drank greedily, the water soothing her parched throat. When she had emptied the cup, she looked up at her savior with wary eyes. "Why did you help me? I'm a white woman." Running Wolf's expression remained impassive, but his eyes held a depth of wisdom that surprised her. "The wind carried your spirit to me. In our language, we would call you Wife of the Wind, one who survives against all odds, carried by forces unseen." "My husband, double quote," Sarah began, tears welling in her eyes. "The sheriff," Running Wolf nodded. "Word has reached even our camp. I am sorry for your loss." Sarah clutched the empty cup, her knuckles turning white. "They killed him because he was doing what was right. The Blackwell gang, they showed no mercy." Running Wolf's jaw tightened. "The Blackwell gang has caused suffering to many peoples, including mine. They do not respect the boundaries of any law, white man's or tribal." A woman entered the teepee carrying a bowl of stew. She spoke to Running Wolf in their native tongue, her eyes occasionally darting to Sarah with curiosity rather than hostility. "This is Morning Star, my sister," Running Wolf explained. "She has prepared food for you. You must eat to regain your strength." Sarah accepted the bowl with trembling hands. "Thank you. Please tell her I'm grateful." As she ate the hearty stew, filled with unfamiliar but flavorful ingredients, Sarah's mind raced with questions. "How long have I been here?" 2 days, Running Wolf replied. "The fever nearly took you, but our medicine woman's remedies helped drive it away." Sarah's spoon halted midway to her mouth. 2 days? I need to get back to town. There are people who will be worried about me." Running Wolf's expression darkened. "The town believes you are dead, like your husband. The outlaws boasted of killing you both." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. "They think I'm dead? It may be safer that way for now," Running Wolf said quietly. The men who seek to harm you will not look for someone they believe is already in the grave. Sarah set the bowl down, her appetite suddenly gone. But I can't just disappear. James and we built a life there. And now that life is gone, Running Wolf said, his voice gentle but firm. The winds of change have blown through your world, Sarah Mitchell. Sometimes the only path forward is to become someone new. As night fell over the Comanche camp, Sarah lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of her new surroundings. Running Wolf's words echoed in her mind. The wife of the sheriff was indeed dead, or at least the world believed her to be. Perhaps in this unexpected place, with these unexpected people, she could find the strength to become someone new, wife of the wind. The weeks that followed were a blur of new experiences for Sarah. Morning Star took her under her wing, teaching her the ways of the Comanche people with patience and gradually something approaching friendship. Sarah learned to prepare meals using unfamiliar ingredients, to tan hides, and to weave baskets from river reeds. Her hands, once soft and unmarked, grew calloused and strong. One morning, as Sarah helped Morning Star gather berries, the Comanche woman studied her thoughtfully before speaking. "Your hair catches sun like Gold River," Morning Star said in halting English, "but eyes always look to horizon. You miss your old life?" Sarah paused, considering the question. "I miss parts of it," she admitted. "I miss having a purpose. James and we were working to make our town safe for everyone." Morning Star nodded. "Purpose important. My brother says you have warrior spirit, like Comanche woman." Sarah nearly laughed at the comparison. "I'm no warrior. I was just a sheriff's wife." "No," Morning Star said firmly, surprising Sarah with her vehemence. "You survive when others would die. You learn our ways quickly. You have strength here." She tapped her chest over her heart. "And here," she touched her temple. Later that day, Sarah found Running Wolf by the edge of the camp, watching as several young men practiced with bows. He acknowledged her with a slight nod. "Your sister thinks I have a warrior spirit," Sarah said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Running Wolf's expression remained serious. "Morning Star sees clearly. The name I gave you, Wife of the Wind, it is not just about survival. The wind is powerful. It can wear down mountains and carve new paths through solid rock. It brings change." Sarah crossed her arms, suddenly uncomfortable under his intense gaze. "I'm not sure what kind of change I could bring. I'm just trying to stay alive." "Perhaps that is enough for now," Running Wolf conceded. "But soon you will need more." Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden arrival of a rider, his horse lathered with sweat. The man spoke rapidly to Running Wolf in their native tongue, his expression urgent. Running Wolf's face darkened as he listened. "What is it?" Sarah asked when the messenger had departed. "The Blackwell gang," Running Wolf said grimly. "They attacked a settlement 2 days' ride from here, many dead." Sarah's blood ran cold. "The same men who killed James?" Running Wolf nodded. "They grow bolder. The army does nothing because the settlement was mostly people of mixed blood, part white, part native. The local law fears them." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "James wouldn't have stood by. He believed justice was for everyone, regardless of their background." "Your husband was unusual among white lawmen," Running Wolf acknowledged. "The others care little for what happens to my people or those with mixed blood." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Images of James kept flashing through her mind, his smile, his unwavering sense of justice, his gentle touch. She slipped out of the teepee she now shared with Morning Star and another young woman and walked to the edge of the camp. The moon hung full and bright in the sky, illuminating the rolling plains around them. "Cannot sleep?" Running Wolf's voice came from behind her. Sarah shook her head. "I keep thinking about those people at the settlement. About James. About how the Blackwell gang continues to hurt people while I hide here." Running Wolf moved to stand beside her. "What would you do if you were not hiding?" The question caught Sarah off guard. I don't know. I'm not a lawman. I can't track them down and bring them to justice." "Perhaps not alone," Running Wolf said quietly. "But you know these men. You know how they think, how the white man's law works. Sarah turned to face him. What are you suggesting? My people have suffered at the hands of these outlaws too. We have skilled trackers, warriors who would welcome the chance to stop those who harm our people. But we do not understand the white man's world as you do. Sarah stared at him, realization dawning. You want me to help you go after the Blackwell gang? Running Wolf's expression was solemn. I want us to help each other bring justice to those who deserve it. Is that not what your husband would have wanted? The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. What would James have wanted? For her to stay safe, certainly. But to stand by while innocent people were harmed? Never. I wouldn't even know where to begin, Sarah admitted. We begin with what we know, Running Wolf said. The gang attacked the settlement of Mixed Creek. They will have left traces, patterns we can follow. And you know their leader from your husband's work. Sarah nodded slowly. Frank Blackwell. James arrested him last year, but his brother broke him out of jail before the trial. Frank swore he'd make James pay. Her voice caught, and he did. Then Frank Blackwell is where we start, Running Wolf said decisively. Tomorrow, I will speak with the council. If they agree, we will begin preparations. As Sarah returned to her teepee, her mind was awhirl with conflicting emotions, fear, doubt, but also a strange sense of purpose that had been missing since James's death. Wife of the Wind, Running Wolf had called her. Perhaps it was time for the wind to change direction and become a force of justice. The tribal council's decision came the following day. After hours of deliberation, the elders agreed to Running Wolf's proposal with conditions. Only a small group would go. Running Wolf, his cousin Swift Arrow, and 2 other warriors. Sarah would accompany them, but they would all be bound by the council's command to seek justice, not vengeance. There is a difference, the eldest council member told Sarah through Running Wolf's translation. Justice brings balance back to the world. Vengeance only creates more darkness. Sarah nodded, understanding the wisdom in his words, even as she felt the burning desire for retribution in her heart. I'll remember, she promised. Preparations began immediately. Morning Star helped Sarah exchange her tattered dress for more practical attire: buckskin leggings, a loose cotton shirt, and sturdy moccasins. She showed Sarah how to braid her hair tightly to keep it from becoming a hindrance. My brother teaches you to shoot bow? Morning Star asked as she worked on Sarah's hair. Sarah shook her head. No, but James taught me to use a revolver. I was a good shot. Morning Star's hands paused. You know white man's weapons. This good. I haven't held a gun since that day, Sarah admitted, her voice dropping to a whisper. When time comes you will remember, Morning Star assured her. Hams do not forget such things. The small party set out at dawn 2 days later. Sarah rode a dappled mare that Running Wolf said had a gentle temperament, but strong endurance. The warriors carried bows and knives, while Running Wolf also had an old rifle he'd acquired in trade years before. To Sarah's surprise, he presented her with a revolver on the morning of their departure. It was taken from a dead outlaw last winter, he explained as she turned the weapon over in her hands. It has been cleaned and kept well. Sarah checked the chamber, loaded the bullets Running Wolf provided, and secured the gun in the holster at her hip. The familiar weight was both comforting and terrifying. Their plan was straightforward but dangerous. They would ride to Mixed Creek, investigate the attack, gather information on the Blackwell gang's movements, and then track them. Once found, they would assess whether to attempt an ambush or to seek help from any nearby lawmen, who might be willing to enforce justice regardless of the victim's heritage. The journey to Mixed Creek took 3 days of hard riding. When they crested the final hill overlooking the settlement, Sarah's heart sank. Even from a distance, the destruction was evident. Several buildings had been burned to the ground, and there was no sign of movement. We are too late to help them, Swift Arrow said grimly. But not too late to learn, Running Wolf replied. Come, but be cautious. The attackers may have left watchers. They approached the settlement slowly, senses alert for any sign of danger. What they found was a ghost town. The bodies had been buried in a mass grave marked with a crude wooden cross, presumably by travelers who had discovered the massacre after the fact. Personal belongings were scattered everywhere, evidence of the hasty looting that had followed the killing. Sarah walked through what remained of the settlement's main street, her throat tight with emotion. A child's doll lay in the dust, its fabric face stained with what might have been its owner's blood. She picked it up, holding it gently. "This is what they do," she said quietly to Running Wolf, who had come to stand beside her. "They destroy lives and move on as if it means nothing." "They will answer for this," Running Wolf promised. "Look there, Swift Arrow has found something." The warrior was kneeling by the remains of what had once been the settlement's small trading post. He held up several brass shells. "From white man's guns," he explained as they approached. "And look here." He pointed to a distinctive boot print in a patch of mud that had been protected from the sun by an overhanging roof. "This print is deep, made by a heavy man with a limp." "Frank Blackwell walks with a limp," Sarah said, recognition flaring. "James shot him in the leg during his arrest." Swift Arrow nodded. "He was here, leading the attack, and they went that way." He pointed west, toward the mountains. Running Wolf conferred briefly with the other warriors. "The mountains provide many places to hide. Caves, abandoned mines. It would be a good place for outlaws to make camp." "There's an old mining town in those mountains," Sarah recalled. "Broken Ridge. It was abandoned when the silver ran out. James once mentioned it might be used by outlaws." "Then we have our direction," Running Wolf decided. "We will make camp here tonight and start fresh at dawn." As dusk fell, Sarah found herself unable to eat. The evidence of brutality surrounding them had robbed her of her appetite. She sat apart from the others, staring at the darkening mountains on the horizon. Running Wolf eventually joined her, offering a cup of coffee. "Your thoughts are heavy," he observed. Sarah accepted the coffee with a nod of thanks. "I keep thinking about James, about what he would do if he were here." "And what would he do?" Running Wolf asked. "He would follow the law," Sarah said. "Gather evidence, form a posse, bring the outlaws in for trial." She looked down at the gun on her hip. "But I'm not sure I have his restraint." Running Wolf was silent for a long moment. "The Comanche way of justice is different from the white man's law. We believe a balance must be restored when wrong is done. Sometimes that means blood for blood. Is that what you want? Blood for blood?" "What I want is for my people to live without fear," Running Wolf replied. "If that means removing those who bring terror, then so be it." Sarah sipped her coffee, letting the bitter warmth flow through her. "When I was a girl, my father told me that revenge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But sitting here, seeing what they've done, I understand the thirst for it." "There is wisdom in your father's words," Running Wolf acknowledged. "That is why the council spoke of justice, not vengeance. We must hold to that difference, even when it is difficult." As Sarah looked up at the stars emerging in the night sky, she wondered if justice and vengeance could truly be separated when the pain ran so deep. Tomorrow they would begin tracking the Blackwell gang in earnest, and soon she would face the men who had taken everything from her. When that moment came, which path would she choose? The trail to Broken Ridge led through increasingly rugged terrain. Swift Arrow, riding ahead as their scout, proved invaluable in following the gang's tracks. By midday, they had reached the foothills of the mountains, and evidence of the outlaws' passage became more frequent: discarded bottles, the remains of a hasty camp, even a bandana caught on a thorn bush that Sarah recognized as similar to those worn by the Blackwell gang. "We're getting close," she warned Running Wolf. "We should move more carefully now." He nodded, signaling to the others to spread out and maintain silence. They proceeded at a slower pace, alert for any sign of lookouts or traps. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, the abandoned mining town came into view. Broken Ridge sat nestled in a natural bowl between two steep slopes, its weathered buildings leaning drunkenly against one another. From their vantage point on a rocky outcrop, Sarah could see movement men walking between buildings, horses in a makeshift corral, smoke rising from several chimneys. I count 12 men, Swift Arrow reported in a hushed voice. 4 buildings with smoke, more than we expected, Running Wolf said grimly. Sarah studied the scene below, her heart racing. The large building at the center, that must have been the assay office. If Frank is here, that's where he'll be. He always liked to take the best for himself. Running Wolf laid a hand on her arm. We cannot fight 12 armed men directly. We need a strategy. Or we need help, Sarah suggested, an idea forming. Broken Ridge is just within the jurisdiction of Fort Davis. There's an army outpost about half a day's ride from here. Running Wolf's expression darkened. The army has no love for my people. They would be more likely to attack us than help. Not if I go alone, Sarah countered. I'm the widow of Sheriff Mitchell. If I tell them the Blackwell gang is here, they might listen. And if they recognize you? The gang spread word that you were killed alongside your husband. Sarah touched her face self-consciously. Weeks in the sun had darkened her once fair skin, and her time with the Comanche had changed her in other ways too, the way she moved, the way she carried herself. I'll say I'm a survivor from Mixed Creek, seeking help. It's not far from the truth. After heated debate, they agreed to Sarah's plan. She would ride to the outpost while the others maintained watch over Broken Ridge. If she succeeded in bringing back help, they would coordinate an attack. If she failed or didn't return by the following sunset, Running Wolf and his warriors would attempt a more subtle approach, perhaps setting a fire as a distraction and picking off the outlaws one by one. As Sarah prepared to leave, Running Wolf pressed something into her hand, a small leather pouch on a cord. For protection, he explained. It carries the prayers of our medicine woman. Sarah slipped it around her neck, tucking it beneath her shirt. Thank you for everything. Return safely, wife of the wind, he replied solemnly. The ride to Fort Davis was arduous, but Sarah pushed her mare as hard as she dared. By the time she reached the outpost, the sun was high in the sky. The soldiers at the gate regarded her with suspicion until she mentioned the Blackwell gang. I need to speak with your commanding officer immediately, she insisted. I know where Frank Blackwell and his men are hiding. Captain Thomas Wilson was a stern-faced man with a thick mustache and skeptical eyes. He listened to Sarah's carefully edited story that she was Helena Ross, a survivor of the Mixed Creek massacre who had been tracking the outlaws responsible. Miss Ross, Wilson said when she had finished, while I sympathize with your loss, I find your story difficult to believe. A lone woman tracking a gang of killers through the wilderness? I was raised in these mountains, Sarah lied smoothly. My father was a trapper. He taught me how to survive, how to track. Wilson studied her for a long moment. And you say the Blackwell gang is at Broken Ridge right now? Yes, sir. I counted 12 men just this morning. The captain stroked his mustache thoughtfully. Frank Blackwell has a substantial bounty on his head. Several, in fact, from different territories. Then taking him in would bring considerable credit to Fort Davis, wouldn't it? Sarah suggested. That argument seemed to sway him. After further questions, Wilson agreed to assemble a detachment of soldiers to ride out that afternoon. Sarah's relief was tempered by concern. Would Running Wolf and the others remain hidden when the army arrived? As they rode back toward Broken Ridge, Sarah managed to position herself near the front of the column, hoping she might spot her companions and warn them before the soldiers did. Captain Wilson kept her close, still seemingly suspicious of her story. You never mentioned how you escaped the massacre at Mixed Creek, he remarked as they rode. Sarah had prepared for such questions. I wasn't in the settlement when it happened. I was hunting in the hills when I returned. Everyone was gone. She let genuine grief color her voice, thinking of James. Wilson grunted, apparently satisfied with her answer. They reached the overlook point by late afternoon. To Sarah's relief, there was no sign of Running Wolf or the others. They had concealed themselves well. Below, Broken Ridge continued its illusion of peaceful abandonment, though she could see men moving between buildings. There, she pointed, the large building at the center. That's where their leader stays. Wilson issued quiet orders to his men. The plan was simple: surround the town, call for surrender, and attack if necessary. Sarah was instructed to remain at the rear with 2 soldiers to guard her. As the soldiers began their careful descent toward the town, Sarah slipped away from her guards. She needed to find Running Wolf and make sure he understood what was happening. Moving silently through the rocks and scrub brush, she nearly collided with Swift Arrow, who materialized like a ghost from behind a boulder. "The soldiers," he whispered urgently. "They will kill us if they find us." "Where is Running Wolf?" Sarah asked. Swift Arrow pointed to a cluster of boulders overlooking the eastern edge of the town. Sarah hurried in that direction, keeping low to avoid being seen by either the soldiers or the outlaws. She found Running Wolf watching the soldiers approach with a grave expression. "You succeeded," he said as she joined him. "Yes, but you need to stay hidden. If the soldiers see you, we will remain in shadow," he assured her. "But we will also be ready if things go wrong." Their conversation was cut short by Captain Wilson's booming voice calling up from the edge of town. "Frank Blackwell, this is Captain Wilson of the United States Army. You and your men are surrounded. Throw down your weapons and surrender." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from several buildings simultaneously. The soldiers returned fire, diving for cover behind abandoned wagons and water troughs. Sarah watched in horror as 2 soldiers fell in the first volley. "They were ready," Running Wolf observed grimly. "Someone warned them." Sarah's mind raced. Who could have? Then she remembered the 2 guards she had slipped away from. Had they seen which direction she went, reported to Wilson? The battle below intensified. The outlaws, entrenched in solid buildings, held the advantage over the soldiers in relatively exposed positions. Sarah could see Wilson shouting orders, trying to organize a more effective assault. "We need to help them," she decided, drawing her revolver. Running Wolf nodded. "We will attack from behind." He signaled to Swift Arrow and the others, who had appeared silently nearby. The soldiers draw their attention forward. We strike from shadow. The plan worked perfectly. While the outlaws focused on the frontal assault, Running Wolf and his warriors slipped into the town from the east, moving silently from building to building. Sarah followed, her heart pounding but her hand steady on her gun. They reached the assay office undetected. Through a dirty window, Sarah could see Frank Blackwell himself, bellowing orders to his men while reloading a shotgun. The sight of him, the man who had ordered James's death, sent a surge of cold rage through her veins. Running Wolf caught her eye, silently asking if she was ready. Sarah nodded. They burst through the door together. Blackwell whirled, raising his shotgun, but Sarah was faster. Her first shot struck his shoulder, spinning him around. The second hit his leg, the same leg James had shot during his arrest. Blackwell collapsed, howling in pain. 2 other outlaws in the room reached for their weapons, but Swift Arrow's arrow found one's chest while Running Wolf's knife embedded itself in the other's throat. Sarah approached Blackwell, her gun trained on his head. He looked up at her, his eyes widening in recognition despite her changed appearance. "You're dead," he gasped. "We killed you with your husband." "You failed," Sarah said coldly. "Just like you fail at everything, Frank." She could see the fear in his eyes as she cocked the hammer of her revolver. In that moment, her father's words about revenge being poison echoed in her mind, alongside the council elder's wisdom about the difference between justice and vengeance. "Sarah," Running Wolf's voice was quiet beside her. "Remember why we came." Sarah's hand trembled slightly. She wanted nothing more than to pull the trigger, to watch the light fade from Frank Blackwell's eyes. But James wouldn't have wanted that. He had believed in the law, in justice rather than revenge. Slowly she lowered her gun. "Frank Blackwell, you're under arrest for the murder of Sheriff James Mitchell and the people of Mixed Creek." Outside, the gunfire was dying down. The combined assault from the soldiers at the front and the unexpected attack from behind had broken the outlaws' resistance. Within minutes, Captain Wilson himself entered the assay office, his uniform dusty and a bloody scratch across his cheek. He took in the scene with surprise, Sarah standing over a wounded Blackwell, the Comanche warriors nearby. "Miss Ross," he said cautiously, I see you've made some friends I wasn't aware of. Sarah straightened her shoulders. These men helped bring down Frank Blackwell, Captain. They deserve your thanks, not your suspicion. Wilson's gaze moved from Sarah to Running Wolf and back again. Something like understanding dawned in his eyes. You're not Helena Ross, are you? No, Sarah admitted. My name is Sarah Mitchell. Sheriff James Mitchell was my husband. Recognition flashed across Wilson's face. The sheriff's wife? But reports said you were killed alongside him. Reports were wrong, Sarah said simply. And now I've helped bring his killer to justice. In the aftermath, as the surviving outlaws were rounded up and the wounded tended to, Sarah stood with Running Wolf at the edge of town, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. What will you do now? He asked her. Return to your people? Sarah considered the question. The woman who had been Sheriff Mitchell's wife seemed as distant now as a half-remembered dream. The woman she had become Wife of the Wind belonged neither fully to her old world nor to Running Wolf's. I think, she said slowly, that I might find a place somewhere in between. There are other settlements like Mixed Creek, places where people of different worlds try to live together. They need protection. Running Wolf nodded, understanding in his eyes. The wind goes where it will, carrying seeds that grow in unexpected places. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Sarah felt a sense of peace that had eluded her since James's death. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, she looked toward the future with hope rather than fear. Wife of the Wind would find her way.